Welcome to the APAC Industry Track, Session 2. So if you're not expecting to be joining the industry track for the next little bit, please feel free to use that drop-down menu and select the other tracks that are running at the moment, which I believe are the technology and the people tracks. But with that, we're going to get started. My name is Karen Reynolds and I'll be your host for today's next track session for industry at the TIPE 2022 conference. I would like to begin by respectfully acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land from where I join this gathering today, the Bunurong Boon Wurrung and the Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung peoples of the Eastern Kulin Nation, and pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. I extend this respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples joining us for this conference and this global gathering. I have been a member of the Women in 3D Printing Oceania group for a couple of years now, so there's some familiar faces on this call. I've already had a chance to connect with some of you during the networking event, but also for those of you who I am meeting today for the first time, a warm welcome to you. Looking forward to catching up with you in our networking session here. So typically on a Wednesday, you will find me working at Lockheed Martin Australia's Stellar Lab, which is based here in Melbourne. So I am the Integrated Systems and Additive Manufacturing Lead. So I lead a team of engineers. Actually, we're currently on a project called Project Agile Shield, which is a counter improvised threat system to intelligently defeat improvised threats. I've had a bit of a career history in the defence sector, so I've worked on the NOLCA program and also on our landing helicopter dock ships in engineering governance roles. And a part of those roles, I really got inspired to join the additive manufacturing community. I actually then undertook a master's in mechanical engineering with a focus on additive manufacturing. So my key focus and my motivation for getting involved with additive manufacturing is to have defence have on-demand parts where they need them, performing reliably. And so my key focus has always been around metal additive manufacturing for the industry. But that's enough about me for now. I would love to catch up with any of you a little bit later on. I'd love to introduce and bring up onto stage the wonderful Trish Pollock, and I'm just going to enable her presentation function so she can come up and say hello. Now, Trish works for AML 3D.
Yes. Hi. Good. I was going to say good morning, everybody, but it's not that. It's good afternoon. Well, where I am in Adelaide, Australia. So thank you for the welcome, Karen. So just a reminder for those that were in our earlier track and participating with in other tracks. If you'd like to chat with each other, you will see on the right-hand side of the screen, if it's hidden, just press the little arrow button, but you'll see a window, a box that's got chat participants and Q&A. So you'll see a general chat. So if you'd like to just have normal conversation during the while the presenters are talking, please post in there. If you would like to private message a participant, you can search and find them in the participants window. And if you've got a question to ask any of our presenters, please do that in the Q&A tab. What we can do there is ask questions, we can upvote them, and we'll select a number of questions to ask the presenter at the end of the session. So back to you, Karen.
Awesome, thanks Trish. Can I just confirm you hear me? I had my little headphones do the weird thing again.
Yes, we can hear you.
Brilliant. All right. Well, so, thank you, Trish. So Trish has been supporting me from the background in preparing all of our speakers for today. So Trish is the marketing specialist at AML 3D, and I know she's going to be hanging around a little bit to share a bit more about her role, her company after this session as well. So we'll look forward to having you in the networking session. But for now, we are going to present a video. So Anina Net. She is the CEO of 360 Fashion. We're going to be listening to a talk that she has pre-recorded for us, and she's going to be joining us for a Q&A session at the tail end here. She's been working on a movie set lately, so she's been, helping us out, replying to emails here and there between all of her, commitments on the set. So she'll be delivering a topic on 3D printing and fashion. So Anina has a background as an international top model and she's from a family of computer engineers. Anina has emerged as an innovative fashion technologist for the last 15 years. She has cooperated with organisations such as Nokia, Samsung, Intel, IBM, and many more, and she applies the latest technologies to the fashion industry. She's an executive producer of the largest fashion tech group for events in China, together with the China National Garment Association. She shows the industry what the fashion of the future should be, and Anina brings fashion industry and startups together to lead the race to connected clothing. She runs 360 Fashion Tech Lab, where she pushes the limits of augmented reality, digital fashion, wearable tech, and virtual reality. Anina recently launched a line of tech-enabled fashion products for women who travel, featured in Target Open House in San Francisco, Bloomingdale's FISF, and also showcased 15 robotic dresses and smart clothing at NYFW, LAFW, and is featured in the Museum of Science and Industry, Chicago. Anina is passionate about helping women learn how to integrate electronics into cutting-edge fashion tech products. And with that, I'm going to bring up a video, so please just bear with me for a second. Let's see if this one works for everyone. For a second, we did a little trial of this one yesterday, but it doesn't seem to be working for me right now. I do have the video in another area. Hopefully it should start working for us soon. I'm sorry about this, everybody. Just bear with us. It did work for us yesterday. Okay, we're just having some technical difficulties with the link that was working for us yesterday. If you just bear with me for 2 more minutes, I'm going to try a different link.
inspiration. My name is Anina, and I'm the CEO and founder of the 360 Fashion Network. Delighted to be speaking today.
All right, welcome back. Apologies for that. You can hear me okay, Trish?
Yes, I can, Karen. Good
Lovely.
to see you
Look,
as well.
It wouldn't be a global virtual conference if there was no technical difficulties. So apologies for that, and thank you, Trish. Now,
No
I'm going to
worries.
bring Anina up to stage for one question. She's dialed in specifically to join us. And we're going to ask one question of Anina, if you would be willing to turn your camera and mic on, and then we'll roll into our next speaker. And I think what I might get Trish to do is to get some of those other questions in the chat area and get you to answer those for some of our listeners. So lovely for you to be here. The question that I think we'll ask today is from Carol McDonald. How do you render the color morphology in software like Adobe Substance, or note the color/morphology for manufacturing?
So I think that's a special process. Can you hear me? Process through the printers. They actually have dual heads, and then they work together through the feeds to feed the two different colors together. Then through the heating process, they combine them, and when it comes out the other side, and that is obviously done on the software side to be able to control, how much color is coming from one end and the other.
Thank you for that. And if you've got some time to stick around and answer some more questions, I had the luxury of watching your full video yesterday and found it really insightful. So apologies for those technical difficulties on my end as we kicked in.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I'm delighted that there are questions, and I hope you enjoyed. I just wanted to let you guys know that I recently bought and invested in a Kickstarter that is a robotic arm 3D printer. And I think it's really exciting to see how moving away from head and into more like the hand drawing as with the pen is really going to bring a new dimension to the printing field, because you can have conveyor belts that will bring in the fabric, and then the robotic arm has much more freedom of movement. And I really think that this is the future, and I can't wait, and I hope that Kickstarter takes off and that they complete it. So I really think the robotic arms are the way to go, because again, you can work on curved surfaces, so on and so forth. So just want to hope that 3D printing companies at your conference are out there and will consider fashion. And I really am excited for all the other presentations today.
Thanks, Anina. And good luck on your movie that you're currently on set for.
Yeah, right. It's in space.
Cool.
All about the future.
That's
Thank
awesome.
you again.
Thanks. And now we're on to Becca Murray. So Becca Murray is with Metro North Health. She is a senior research fellow in Urologic Biofabrication. Now, I know her topic originally was presented as AM in hospitals, but Becca has a really interesting background, and she shifted her presentation to be point of need manufacturing for the defence and hospital experience. So I'll just share a little bit about Becca's, you can see her on the screen there. So Rebecca is a biomedical and materials engineer with 11 years of industry and research experience in biomedical design and engineering, as well as 7 years of experience in 3D printing and materials. After receiving a distinction for her Masters in Biomed Engineering from Oxford University in 2010, Rebecca was awarded a European Marie Curie Research Fellowship to complete her doctorate from Hamburg University of Technology. Rebecca's prior research areas include bioactive glass and 3D printing, as well as shoulder, hip, and spinal implant design. Becca has attracted over $3.3 million in direct funds for a combination of industry-led projects, direct industry funds, government grants, and contract manufacturing projects. She has led many bilateral and multilateral projects with diverse stakeholders, including government, universities, Australian Defence Forces, and industry partners. She is a current Defence Innovation Advisor and was a recipient of the Charles Darwin University College of Engineering, IT, and Environmental Early Career Researcher Award in 2020. And so with that, I would like to welcome Becca to commence presenting on her topic.
Thank you very much, Karen, for the introduction, and thank you for allowing me to speak about some of my experiences that I've had. So for the topic today, I'm going to speak a little bit about my experiences in major medical industry in ceramic and shoulder implant design that kind of informed my work in defense, and then now where I am in the hospital setting to do point of care manufacturing. So what are some commonalities between defense and hospitals? They're both very complicated, highly hierarchical organizations. It makes it quite difficult to get anything standard through. There's a rapid and critical need of diverse and sophisticated parts. But one of the things that I think really ties them together is they provide frontline protection. Life hangs in balance, so there's this high risk and high reward for any product you might use there. And so therefore, any product must work. And in that case, that is why that's often very highly regulated to make sure that people's lives are protected. So the additive manufacturing vision, as a lot of people know, is that you can make this digital twin, like this digital representation of the product that you want, that can allow for an adaptable digital inventory so that you'll be able to print on demand and also produce just-in-time parts. This can help with obsolescence management, being able to do mass customization of different parts to fit different bodies, and also enhance logistics like the decentralized production. And it's taking off. 3D printing is growing at a CAGR of 17 to 26% over the last 20 years. It's just rapidly expanding. You come to these events, there's something new. You can see from the pictures here, there's applications from art, defense, food production, fashion is what we've been hearing about a lot today. Biological printing, there's an ear attached to the little rat there, and also then the defense industry. The reality of 3D printing is there's a lot of promise, a lot of new capability that you can do, but with anything new, you also have the unknown and also different defects. You got heat with the laser production that slows the process down. You then have post-processing, you got layer defects. All these things are part of the process and learning that you need to do to overcome. And it's being done by innovation every day. So it's new. There's new technology, new advantages that each of the new technologies bring, new applications that also have to be discovered. And in this process has to be developed for each of the technologies. You also have to minimize risk to people, to companies. So there's a drive to open paths for use. And in order to be able to have these use, and especially in the critical industry where lives are at stake, there has to be a fundamental building of trust that the technology works, that you can understand how it works, that you can control the process. And in order to do this, you need time, you need effort to build it, you need examples of what to do, you need to teach people how, you need to innovate in the space, and then really provide that evidence in order for these parts to be used in that critical industry. And for me, there's a lot of different inputs to this, but some of the core bits are the design that you want to use and the technology and how it merges with the materials that enable it to happen. And the people have to be upskilled. So you have to train the people, you have testing to be done to learn. And at the heart of all this, what you can do, in my opinion, the best thing you can do is just try things. So case studies. So make a plan of what you want to do. Go do it, make the model, do the 3D printing, use the object that you are making, and in that process, do testing, do R&D, do innovation, check process parameters so you can learn and then apply that learning and you adapt your product. And this is what 3D printing is all about. You get customization in this way, you're going to be building and you're innovating in that space. So case studies, to me, are at the heart of what's driving this big uptake in 3D printing and what it's all about. So it's quite different from the major medical industry experience. I was a research and development engineer at a company called Ceramic. They have a ceramic medical product that is like major market leader in the ceramic orthopedic implant. For hip implants, it provided over 99% of the hip ball heads to all the major medical manufacturers, Zimmer, Biomet, Stryker, all of them. It's because the material is quite structurally good, hardware, and it's excellent. And so the CeramTech was looking to take this material and use it in different applications. So my job was to make it into the shoulder. And so I was working on multiple different series with a couple different major companies to get their designs transferred to ceramic. But in that process, what came up was kind of cool. There was a patient-specific shoulder. There was a lady that was allergic to almost all the metals. You couldn't find a bearing surface that would work. So our customer approached us and said, can you make this patient-specific one? And so in that process, we had to redesign their design. We had to do all the testing we would have done for a major implant. We had to develop the paperwork for it because we'd never done it for a single patient before. We worked with the surgeons to make sure it would make sense. Did the product specification and marking. And then in the end, quite excitingly, it was the first implant ever implanted by our group. It was a shoulder put into a patient, and they had a satisfied patient and a happy surgeon, which is always a great thing to hear. What I saw from this is that this process was a miniature or that one implant. And I was like, how can you get that scalable? And for anything that is quite an extensive process, having a really good framework is very important. So additive manufacturing has some development frameworks that are being implemented. One of them is from DNV. It's here, you can find it, and they've summarized quite nicely the different inputs and how they can affect an AM part. They have good processes on how they can certify parts, but these frameworks from these organizations and multinationals are very important so that you can go from an applications-driven certification process in medical to a more, you certify the process so you can have an adaptable end product and you just check that it meets the end goals. So this leads into my defense part. So I worked as the director of the Advanced Manufacturing Alliance at Charles Darwin University. I'm also the Defense Innovation Advisor for Australian Defense. So you have a completely different setting here than the medical industry. It's remote. You have very complicated logistics. You only have what's at your doorstep. You've got very sophisticated equipment, a rapid and critical need for diverse parts and demanding applications, and again, that high risk. So there's a need to have a functional and adaptable technology. The Army had identified 2 technologies they wanted to try, a basic FDM, Creality, and then a new technology based on cold spray called Speed 3D. So they also how do you start working on process scoping and building? The people they had were regular soldiers, and so they didn't have training in this space. CDU worked with them and the startup company Speed 3D. CDU developed the training and process development to build skills and know-how. We worked on assessing feasibility and benefit, but we really worked on those real-world applications as case studies. We had defense identify what their actual need was, where there were areas they needed something to make. We worked with them to assess feasibility and the benefit to them and how to quantify what could the benefit be. We worked on design and print and then summarize the evidence because you have to have that digital trace. The first part was quite more standard, a structured theory and deliver of a practical project, 2 to 3 week time frame, design and fabricate a simple part, build the digital trace and test for evidence. But we did this in a little different way. We built our own micro-credentials, so a suite of 6 different ones for each of the different topics that we were teaching in that course. What was great about this is they're very easy to assemble. You could a student might only be able to accomplish 3 rather than 6. And we also made different levels. So for that course that was very structured, is level 1. But the thing about micro-credentials is they're shorter. It's a really relatively new way of recognizing the skills and knowledge. They're more targeted, they're rapidly developing, and it's a really good way of adapting and making knowledge more accessible and allowing people to get recognized for that learning. The next step is we went into case studies. So we went the whole process from CAD modeling, making the plan, to simulation, to printing, to final part. They're starting with the actual identification of the case studies. And when we were doing this, where do you think we actually performed the case studies? Normally you do it in a quite controlled setting, but when Army, they decided, let's take it out to the field. And so we were in middle of the Northern Territory bush, so in middle of Australia. And they decided to load the printer up on the back and see if it could be deployed, because the technology is not useful if you can't actually take it to where it needs to be. And so the first test was taking the printer out there and making sure it worked. And then the second field trial that we did is we did all the steps. So we did designing, you can see there a soldier working on the modeling, also with our engineer, Matt. And you can see the simulation and the design process there. The printing, you can see here, this is actually using what Nina's talking about with the robot arm, used to catch this powder that's being sprayed at 3 times the speed of sound. And you can build up to about like 80 kilogram parts with this really big machine. And so they were able to print and post-process. And here's some of the different parts that we made. So that's from a piece from an armored vehicle. The other is a BSM mount and a gunner's ratchet, which I'll talk about in a moment. But not just the creating of the parts, the CNC machining of the parts, the heat treating of the parts. We also implemented our entire materials research line that we were doing. So we've got a paper on the aluminum 6061 printing, but we got our tensile tester out there, the powder mixing, that there in the picture is the first tensile piece we made out field, and we pulled the sample. And so we were able to verify the material that we made out field to make sure it still performed like it did in the kind of traditional setting. So one of this is the BSM mount. So it replaced a cast aluminum mount that was a fleet-wide issue. It had defective area that kept breaking. So it was 48 minutes to print 2 of them. That did require some CNC machining. As you can see, they printed it in aluminum, but this one here was printed in aluminum bronze. Here's a gunner's ratchet. What was great about this is it replaced a part that had a 12-month lead time. When you're out field and your gun isn't working, you can't wait 12 months for it. So this allowed you to have an off-the-shelf ratchet mechanism and attach to it. We also were challenged by the Navy to make a 2-inch cam lock for an Armadale class Navy patrol boat. We also did take them through training later. We had to make sure it met material military specification. So we looked up the different mil spec there, it's listed, and classified all the different steps we needed to do and tested towards each of those. And in the end, we even did an extra field test, and you got that picture of me shooting the water cannon, but it passed every test there. So in a short time frame, within 10 months, we were able to complete 32 case studies with Army alone, with all the paperwork behind it. We were able to see that there's an initial process to check which additive manufacturing capabilities might work. Can you check the components in the design? We were able to upskill the people. This was actually really cool. The everyday soldiers were able to go through the process, and not all of them, from 16 that started, 7 really went through the entire process and went through the case studies and really enjoyed that process and getting to use their skills. So I was excited to get back into medical. Defense was really cool. There was a lot of excellent applications, but my passion has always been in the medical arena. So I took an opportunity to come to Brisbane as a senior research fellow in urological biofabrication. While I was here, though, they were doing some 3D printing and providing some anatomical models to some of the clinics. And so we wanted to make this a a product that we could use. And so here you can see the anatomical model is that you take the 2D scans from CT or MRI and you make a virtual model, a 3D model, and then you can print that. These have reported benefits of increasing the patient's understanding of their disease, reducing their anxiety. It enhances student and surgeon training. It supports the surgeons in their planning. And for my particular area, it was shown to reduce the positive margin rate, so reduce leaving cancer behind. So it has quite a wide-ranging benefits. So we were looking to unlock these benefits through point-of-care manufacture here on site in a 24 to 48-hour time frame. But we ran into a couple of regulatory hurdles. So prior to February 2021, these models were exempt based on custom-made exemption, and that's what we were using to provide it. But since February 2021, they've moved to a Class 2A patient-matched medical device. And so these are medical devices, they're regulated, we have to meet their criteria. So what does that mean? We have to meet the essential principles, we have to produce them under a quality assurance framework, and then be included in the ARTG. So these increased regulatory requirements are profoundly affecting all health services in Australia, and because we don't have the system set up. And so this is quite a large hurdle to overcome. So I used the stuff I learned from the major medical industry, working in German manufacturing, which is top of the line, as well as at patient specific. And then going through the essential principles and the regulations. The regulations are over thousands of pages. And so these essential principles checklist was a refreshing 28. And it summarizes the regulations in a way that you can really approach. Combine that with some of the other ISO standards. So what do you need? It depends. Everything about this is risk-based. So you have to do your own risk assessment on your product, but for some of them, they're quite clear. For anatomical models, it was quite clear as a 2A now. But the sponsor, the people making it, have to determine it. And so you have to give, so in the documentation process, it's one of the main things that you have to do. You always have to document the rationale for why you do it, the date, who made it, document versions. And so we use the ISO 13485 format for that. And in that, we created a technical file documentation. It refers to all the documents that a medical device manufacturer has to submit to a certifying body. The technical file is required in order to get certification. So basically, it's a lot of paper, a lot of all your testing summarized in a way that can be reviewed and shows that you have actually conformed to the regulations. So anatomical models, what are they? For us, they defined them as a medical device. So once we know that, then you have to define them in terms of your regulation. So TGA, it's a patient-matched device, has a GMDN code that we found. You have to determine the risk level, and then we had to define who's going to make it, who's going to take that liability, who's going to work on it, and both of those are Metro North. You get that, you're like, where do I start? So always for me, it's with a plan. So I've designed a device based off 13485 to support conformity. It's called the design plan. Looked at the essential principles checklist, performed a risk assessment according to the ISO standard. And that's the best place to start. It gets you understanding what design, what your requirements are, where you need to go with regulation. So in the end, we came out with a HPI, technical file documentation framework, that consists of 11 documents that plan out the whole process. We are also in the process, we've got kind of a buy until 2024 to get the full quality management system up and running. And so we're working towards that at the moment. We've got 53 documents, we've got patients matched, device documents particularly. We're building the SOPs, but one of the cool things is we've got the custom-made anatomical model listed. We've got a framework that we can use. We're implementing the QMS, and we are currently supplying our clinical departments with patient-matched anatomical models. You can see there at the right, the first one we delivered. And so we've we've got a pretty good max facts department in orthopedics group that provide some of these anatomical models. They pre-bend surgical plates around it. It reduces operation time. It actually then really conforms to the anatomy. The surgeons get a better fit. One particular case study is this person had a very large tumor up on its mandible, and it needed a free flap reconstruction. So basically they take a part of the bone from another area of the body, either the tibia, which isn't preferred, or the scapula. And here it was really challenging because it was such a big defect. And the scapula also had a really weird anatomical deformation at the bottom, a weird point. And so the modelers were able to work with the surgeons to design where to cut the scapula here to transfer it into the mandible, and also plan the cuts to the mandible in order to make sure that that free flap would fit and that the person would have a jaw that could look fairly normal at the end and also function well, which is the main part. So the framework that we're building on, so we're actively participating in the regulatory environment because it's rapidly changing. We're starting to measure our clinical impact and integration. And this is a strong framework that we're really building the different devices. We've already extended to radiation therapy boluses and brachytherapy devices. So what does all of this experience kind of lead down to? For me, it's evidence and trust building. So through that, I think, again, the heart is the case study. Show your examples. And what is a good case study? You can actually do it. It's feasible. It brings value to the organization you're working for, and it provides capability and function. The documentation of the evidence is really key. It must be streamlined. You must be able to do it. It has to be quick in order to get the turnaround. And each device is then checked for form, fit, and function. Building consensus frameworks are really important. So not just one company doing on its own, that you can do it internationally. So I actually sit on the ISO TC 261 additive manufacturing, and then one particularly that works with medical devices. And the things that I've learned is that in order to get a 3D printing up and running, you need to have an organization willing to take considered risk and also make the investment, the time and money investment. And you have to have people engaged and want to take part and just start working towards it and be able to work through unknown situations. It's really hard when you're like, where do I start? This hasn't been done before. They're making new classifications. But as long as you provide reason and document what you're doing, typically you can keep talking and working around what is a better solution. And so the process is big, it's iterative. You'll come back to the beginning. And through that process, you'll build trust, knowledge, and know-how. And that is the way you'll build evidence. And so the kind of take homes I have are 3D printing is actually currently being utilized in critical defense. Its full uptake is going to depend on building that level of trust. And building that level of trust can be really helped by that certification process. And just don't get lost in the paperwork. It's a lot, but it's important because it's high risk and it's high reward to patients' lives, and it can affect and change them for the better. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
I got to see firsthand the amazing work that you do in 3D. You really kicked a lot of goals that other organisations and teams haven't been able to do. So kudos to you for that. And I really do hope that you have the same in your new role within the hospital and health sector. Now, we do have a question here, if I may. So, has your research investigated the impacts of material stiffness of implants to the effects of bone loss around the implant and osseointegration?
Yes. So my particular research, I guess my first part was in bioactive glasses, and it was for a glass that would coat titanium, and so it would improve the osseointegration of implants. That, for me, my 3D printing work hasn't touched on that issue. I know one of the pictures I showed on 3D printing taken off is the trabecular metal that has been developed. That's, I think, usually made with EBM process. And it shows such good osteointegration so that the bone grows into the implant, which is what they wanted to make sure the implant stayed where it was. But it grew in too well that the surgeons actually couldn't remove it when they needed to. And so they had to actually redesign it so it didn't quite integrate that well. But my work hasn't crossed into that area yet, I would say. Yeah.
Maybe one last question, if that's okay. Why did you decide to present for us here at TIPE today?
I decided to present because a lot of the areas I've worked, I've been the only female. Like sitting in on like the defense meetings, I was the only one in a technical role or a leading role. And I think it's just really important to show some images and to provide stories. And to, like here, I'm the only one at my level working on the ground in the engineering aspect that's female. And so I think it's really important to have examples of it working. Again, case studies, maybe I'm just all about examples. So I think it's just really important to have that known. And I would love to talk with people. If you have any questions, ideas, I like to work together. I love collaboration. So just to kind of get that presence out there.
Really awesome motivator. Thank you for using that as your inspiration to join us here at 2022 today, Becca.
Oh, thanks, Karen.
Brilliant. All right, and now next up we have Yoko Hirono. So we're a little bit 5 minutes behind schedule because we had a few technical difficulties earlier on, so we'll go slightly over time as well. So Yoko Hirono works for DMG MORI Co. She is the operating officer for their research and development headquarters. She is in charge of the DMG MORI Co. additive manufacturing development. Her talk today is going to be looking at directed energy deposition applications and those innovative processes around them. So Yoko, I am just going to enable your camera and bring you up on stage. So Yoko is presenting today from Japan. We are delighted to have her present as a leader in the additive manufacturing industry. Yoko successfully specialized in Japan as the first this then her energy where she right to the yeah. With the long tenure, Yoko Hirono holds stories like we are here with us.
Hello, can you see my screen?
I can see your screen, yes, I can hear you.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, thank you for the introduction. Hello, I am Yoko Hirono working for DMG MORI. I am in charge of AM machine development. Today, I'd like to talk about DED side of AM. First of all, let's look at the AM market. 2020 metal AM market is 2 billion and 70% of this is SLM. Expected fields were changed from high-value additive fields like aerospace or medicals to industrial fields like automotives. The market is considered to grow highly as CAGR from 2020 to 2025 is around 30%. I know the participants are really familiar with AM, but I just want to share the industrialization index. As we expected, the powder bed fusion or selective laser melting is the most industrialized technology. And the next one is DED, directed energy deposition, the LMD, laser metal deposition. The DED is the machine has laser head and nozzle. The laser and powders are coming from the nozzle. Powders are melted by laser and solidified on the base material. And on the other hand, the SLM is maybe no need to be explained, but spread powder material over the previously joined layer ready for processing of the next layer. Now we move on to the DED market. This data came from AM Power, and we can see the strongest growing market among AM is DED. I was thinking why DED is spreading, and one idea came up to me. Let me explain to use this slide. This slide shows the target market for DED, and this was made by voice of customers. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, they were thinking to use DED for making whole large parts from scratch. However, for instance, look at the oil and gas field. They need wear-resistant surface coatings for drill bit or multi-material manufactured body. For the screw shaft of industry fields, they can use the low-price base shaft and just added the screws by DED on it. For this part, they added copper-based alloy parts on normally subtractive manufactured part, or they are repairing MORIs by DED. So, in summary, we can use the DED not only building the app, but also coatings and multi-materials or repairings. This is the portfolio we have in the advanced technologies. We have ultrasonics and laser subtractive machines, and also we have the additive manufacturing machines. The last line is the SLM side, and we have the DED machines here. We have the additive only machine and also hybrid machine. Hybrid machine has additive manufacturing and plus cutting subtractive manufacturing. And we have the 5-axis based machine and also mill turning based machine. So I think the customer is not interested in what the AM machine itself, what AM machine DMG MORI is making, but I think the customer or users are interested in what kind of parts the machine can create and what is the quality of that. So this page shows the quality evaluation results, and we confirmed the porosity 5%. That means the density is 99.95%. This slide shows the tensile strength test. We are comparing to casting, hot forging, cold forging, and we found the value of our machines are between hot forging and cold forging, which is pretty good, isn't it? And next application test is wear-resistant coating. We did coat test by cladding of cobalt alloy on shaft-shaped base material. Setup is like this, and we can see the layer surface as built and calling finished surface here. No holes or no cracks on the finished cutting surface, no peeling of the drying fishing cuttings. The hardness was Vickers 530. And next test we did the we were using 72. For the people need much higher hardness, we use the powder high-speed steel, which is called as HAP 72. No holes, no cracks again, and no peeling during finish cutting as well. The hardness was, I was surprised, but the Vickers 870, the hardness, and even after the heat treatment, we got the HAP 72 hardness Vickers 1000. So this is really hard material. We can clad and we can deposit by our machine. And from this slide, I would like to talk about the quality. Now, AM is not the prototyping, but the production stage. So many users are worrying about the quality control. We released some quality control functions. First one here is melt pool monitoring. This monitoring is monitoring the melt pool temperature and area. And the next one is working distance monitoring. Working distance is the distance between nozzle and melt pool here. This is very important for the stable building. And this one is working area monitoring. We have to think about the workpieces, whole workpieces, not only the melt pool. So we put this monitoring system here. And we also have powder flow sensor and powder calibration system. Slightly more detail for working distance monitoring. We added one more camera here to observe the working distance between nozzle tip and melt pool. As we can, if the working distance is out of required area, the machine stops with alarm. We developed the image-based algorithm to calculate the working distance. And this page shows the working area detail. This is a contactless workpiece temperature measurement system. Whole working area can be observed. User can decide where they would like to see to use the specific process window. This slide shows the powder calibration unit. The calibrated in-sheet detector monitors powder mass flow during the cladding process, and irregularities in the powder feed rate can be detected. The last one is nozzle adhesion detection. We developed the image analysis to detect the nozzle adhesion here by processing materials with unfavorable cladding behavior. The system diagram is like this. From this page, I would like to share the customer success. First one is mold repair by Toyota Bowden. This is the worn out mold, damaged mold, and 3D scanner detects where has to be repaired. And then, because this machine is the hybrid machine, so cutting and DED has. So the worn out part cut first. After this, needed part is repaired by DeD and finish cutting. Then we can get like brand new mold again. The customer says they could get 3 times life expectancy compared to manual repairing when operators are repairing by hand. Sometimes something happens and or the finished quality is depend on who did it. Now, customer says no reworks are needed. Second one is the success story by Virgin Orbit. They are making rockets. To make this rocket nozzle, they are using 2 technologies, SLM and DeD. They are manufacturing copper rocket nozzle inside part by SLM first, and then they coat heat-resistant material like Inconel by DeD. They say they could shorten the 90% lead time. That means 10 times productivity. The left, they are using DeD for pump shaft repairing. The worn out bearing wheel along pump shaft is like this. And if this part is old and if they don't have a drawing, they can use the 3D scanner and they can get a 3D model by reverse engineering. And damaged area was removed by cutting. And then deposited AM for repairing. And the as-built surface is like this. Like new part was obtained by fishing finished cuttings. And the final topic is about carbon neutral. I'd like to talk about how we can contribute to the carbon neutral society by DeD or SLMs. The process integration helps production time reduction, and that helps to reduce CO2. The left one is about gear production for transmission. Conventional process work, they have to use their turnings, hubbings, chamfering, hardenings, and grindings. Our DeD machine is hybrid and can integrate these processes. The right one is repairing mode, like Toyota Bodin said. They can reduce the final cutting time because DeD can make thinner layers than these welding processes by hand. If the repaired part is larger, the more finishing cutting time is required. That is why the processing time is reduced by using DeD. And even changing over time is also reduced by integrating repair and finishing into hybrid AM process. This is the end of my presentation, and feel free to email me when something happens, something comes up to you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us here today, Yoko, and working with us to get your presentation up and running. So I've got a few questions here for you, and for others on the call, feel free to put any additional questions in the chat. Just confirm you can hear my mic a little bit better than maybe before as well? Brilliant.
Yeah, great.
Cool. So the first question I have for you is why DMG MORI, why have they chosen to develop a hybrid system?
Thank you for the question. From the industry 4.0, they are looking at the digitalization or artificial intelligence. And we think these are not the one we have to think first. The one tracking or process integration first we have to think about, then automation is needed, Then people are not in front of the machine. Then we have to collect kinds of data instead of people. Then much data we have, and we can use this data for digitalization and AI improve the system. So we think this machine, hybrid machine, is the process integration machine, the base for technology. So we thought the hybrid system is the mass development item. Yes.
Awesome, great answer for that one. And like with the DED process that obviously you shared on today and you've just spoken about, what for your organisation is your targeted field of application? Do you have a specific target as DMG MORI?
Yes. So several years ago, they were thinking about to use AEM as building up complicated parts system. Thinking about the SLM, that is true. But when it comes to talk about DED, that is something true and sometimes maybe not. As presented, DED enables us to not only build up from scratch, but also adding some parts, coating wear resistant or heat resistant material, make multi-material parts, and so on. So we are looking at not only high value added like space industry, but also the normal industry like the die-cut rolls, screw shaft, or molds, and so on. Thank you.
Awesome. It sounds like you guys are targeting some broad but like niche areas as well. But obviously, it's nice to see how that's translated over time. So a question from myself to you is, in the year of 2022, what is a specific project or part you're designing that you're really looking forward to the challenge?
We were looking at the quality control by monitoring melt pool or the workspace area, but we would like to make the AI system for the customer. The customer wants to know the mechanical properties like tensile strength or porosities, or what kind of mechanical properties they can get. And they need the input parameter like laser power or powder feed rate. So they would like to get the good mechanical property. And how? What parameter they use? If they use, they get the good mechanical property. So we needed to match this by artificial intelligence and understanding the mechanism. So we will create the software for the customer to automatically create the parameters to get the good mechanical property.
Thank you for that answer. I'm a keen finder of those mechanical properties myself. So obviously that comes into assurance and certification. And as more companies trend towards needing to use these parts, actually in application, that's becoming increasingly important. So knowing that you and your team are working on finding easier ways for your customers to get that information, obviously is going to be a well-needed information source, or access to that information more easily and readily. Well, thank you for joining us, Yoko. I haven't seen any additional questions in the chat or in the Q&A, but just a little bit of a last call out for any questions for Yoko. Please feel free to put it in the chat. Otherwise, Yoko, I'm sure you're going to join us for some networking shortly after in the industry roundtable room. So just stay online with us for a bit, Yoko. And so some people might reach out to you individually if you've got the time for us today. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so I would just like to thank Anina Net, Becca Murray and Yoko Hirono for doing some presentations for us here in the APAC afternoon. And also we've got our industry sponsors and also that would like to thank, but then also just highlighting that obviously there's still a lot more sessions to run into this evening and into tomorrow, and also our virtual career fair. So if you've enjoyed some of the content that's been delivered here today, Feel free to let your colleagues know, or any young engineers or young ladies or anyone who's really interested in picking up 3D printing in their career or for a hobby in their life. Feel free to invite them along to that virtual career fair as well. And with that, we're going to return to the networking area. So thank you for joining me. Trish has headed over to the technology track if you would like to hear her speak a little bit more as a part of a panel about women in the industry. Thanks for joining us.